we started, we bought regular 4-bedroom home with a pool in a pretty close location to the beach, and they were doing amazing. And then when the market really became saturated, so before they started to shift south, we were saying, okay, what's the next thing that we can do that is different? And that's how we kind of took a risk, let's say, for the first property, and we bought something in the suburbs, because the logic say that it's vacation rental, like that's kind of like the name of it. So if it's a vacation rental, you're like, why will people go to a suburb and pay $1,200 a night for a house? And we assume that if we're gonna do what we just said, the experience home, to give them all the options, they will want to do it. But when you're the first one that does it, it's kind of like a risk, and it was very profitable risk at the end. And then we start copying it, and that's pretty much all we do right now, to buy all-inclusive resort-style homes.
My name is Rodman Schley. As a real estate expert, I've invested millions of dollars in vacation properties all around the world, and I've been involved in the valuation of billions of dollars of properties. I want to share my 35 years of experience along with vacation home investment tips from the top minds in the short-term vacation rental industry. Now, let's do the work. Hey everybody, welcome to the Vacation Property Secrets Podcast. I'm your host, Rodman Schley, and today we're going to talk investing with Alon Orbach, a partner in the investment brokerage arm for Designed VR, a South Florida company with over $150 million in vacation properties in their portfolio. Designed VR specializes in offering a comprehensive A to Z solution for vacation rental investors. From purchasing the right properties to expertly managing them, Designed VR delivers a comprehensive, complete package designed for maximum profitability. Alon, welcome to the show.
Hi, Rodman. Thank you so much.
Now, I'm excited to have you here today. We're going to talk a little bit about short-term vacation rental like we always do on this show. But today we're going to come at it from a little bit of a different point of view. We're going to come at it from an investment point of view where you're looking at larger portfolios and coming in and doing more than just a property, doing multiple properties. So this is something that a lot of people think about. Some people don't like to do it. Some people like to do that one property, and that's good enough. I just want a vacation home. But a lot of people also want to look at how can I build wealth through a portfolio of vacation homes. And I think you're going to have some really good information for them today.
Yeah, I'm glad to be here and share all the information I can and to take it from here.
Alon, tell me a little bit about your background.
So my background, I moved here from Israel about 18 years ago. I came here for school purposes. I majored in economics. I moved here actually due to me playing volleyball. I was an athlete. I had a scholarship, and then I continued right after school to do property management. I managed about 300 to 400 units. It depends on what time. And then from that, I actually moved to LA for a couple of years. I had some businesses there. I came back, straight back into real estate. And then I started to have more experience in different variety of stuff, such as also property management, but also to do the actual transactions for purchasing, selling, and the renovations. So I got involved in a lot of different aspects. And then when the market starts shifting up, and I used to work only with long-term investors, they used to make around, let's say, 8% cap rate, and they were pretty happy with that. It was very hard to get those 8%. And then we start looking into what's next. What can we still offer them to get a higher percentage on the return? And that's how the Airbnb pretty much started. And then the whole thing got created.
So you went from basically supporting businesses to being in business. You learned the management side. You saw how the operations happened on the back side of the equation. Went away for a little bit, came back, and started doing this yourself.
So yes, but in this company right now, so it's a pretty large company. I'm focusing only right now on the acquisition side. I did a lot of stuff before, but then the time was too much consuming, and I wanted to focus on what I'm doing best, which is to actually locate the deal, do the analysis, and then also work with the investors themselves, the bank, the insurance companies, everything, and create the deal. And then basically it goes to the next stage. I used to do also the construction side, and it was just too much to do. So I'm not really involved in all aspects at the moment. It's more about the acquisition side.
Gotcha. So this is going to be really interesting because, we talk a lot about the buys, how you make money on the buy, or the returns that you're going to get are very dependent on how well you buy a property. And so many people buy properties, but they don't really understand the fundamentals behind it. They don't understand the cash flows. They don't understand how to project the expenses. But this is what you do. So you're coming in and you're looking at deals. Like, how many deals are you looking at in a week?
Well, to look at deals, it can be like 30, 40 a month, let's say.
Mm-hmm.
We're trying to buy around 2 to 3 a month.
Okay. And then what are the metrics that you're looking at when you're buying these? Are you looking more at, are you doing full pro formas? Are you going in, and how are you looking at the deals when you're penciling these things out, going, is this a deal that we're interested in looking at or pursuing or not? What are some of the fundamentals that you look at in terms of the metrics?
So with time, we start focusing solely on single families, luxury, acre lot that are usually above 4,000 square foot. And in that area, we're very good. Like if you show me a house, I know very fast if it's even interesting to look into it. Also with vacation rental, especially in Florida, you have so many areas that you need to know all the regulations. So a lot of the areas that might have amazing homes, you can't even do vacation rental. So that really minimized a lot of the deals already. And then within that area, so as a company, you don't want to be spread all over. You want to make sure that you can actually do the service, the management, and have all the people in that area that can do the management side, the cleaning side, the repair side. So we're only looking at areas that we can buy, let's say 10 homes in that area in the, not in the immediate time, but let's say in a year, 2 years, we want to make sure that we can at least get like 10 in that specific area. So that's how we even start focusing. And then because we already have a lot of homes, we have a lot of data. So with that data, we know very, very good the expenses that the real expenses for each home. I can promise you that people that have like 1 to 2, 3 homes, they don't really put all the right expenses in analysis. It just, that's how it is. There's so many small variables that becomes like large at the end. So we're very good with numbers. So that's pretty much how we even start looking at the deal. And also the market changing all the time with the regulations, the rules, and that's actually how we got into the luxury homes. We started in a complete different market, and that's what we found out is the only way to keep making great returns.
Yeah, well, it makes sense that you're clustering homes. I feel like when you start building a portfolio, if you cluster, then you can take advantage of the same cleaning people, the same maintenance people. You've got more support and more efficiencies for sure. But I see that a lot of people, when they're getting in, they're not even looking at expenses. So I always tell people, it's like when you get into looking at a home, try to get 3 years of operating expenses. Try to figure out, how has this been operating? Because so many people, what they do is they underestimate their expenses and they overestimate their income. And I always try to get them to turn that around and go, listen, get a little more conservative, underestimate that income a little bit, overestimate those expenses, and then try to get to cap rate or a rate of return, a cap rate that you want, and then back into what you can pay for the property instead of the other way around. But I feel like people are looking at investments, they'll just fall in love with a home. They don't look at the investment fundamentals. They don't look at the expenses. They back of the napkin stuff.
Yeah.
And they look at it the wrong way. And unfortunately, they get their property and can't figure out why they're not making money.
I can tell you that on another side, a lot of the homes, so one of our projection is to hold the home for about 3 to 5 years, depends, and then sell it, use the money to buy more properties. So basically, we're giving appreciation to the property and then sell it and buy more. And a lot of the properties that we're selling at basically a high market value, I still get like 90% of the people that come to see the house to buy are investors. And at that price, the numbers will not work, because when you put in the appreciation, they're going to be way off, like maybe 2 or 3% cap rate. And the sad part is that if the home that I'm selling wouldn't do Airbnb already, so they probably will buy it because they think they will make great returns. Now I know the numbers, so if people come in and they say, "Oh, I see that it's doing Airbnb. Can I see the numbers?" I'm not going to tell them we don't have numbers. Of course, I'll share it. Also, I don't want people to buy a really bad property, of course, even though if they don't come through us. So it's just funny that if the house will have been vacant, they probably think, "Oh, it's an amazing opportunity." But then when it actually already have the numbers, it's not.
Yeah.
And that's where a lot of people are failing, because they just don't really know the right numbers, like you just mentioned. And also you have to put in, and that's what really most people don't do, is future projections of expenses. So, for example, when we started, let's say the $2 million range homes, the insurance at the beginning was roughly 1.1% from the home value that we purchased. So let's say we bought it for, let's say, 1.5. So it was around like 17,000 insurance cost. After a couple of years, with everything that's going on in Florida, the insurance came up to $25,000-$30,000 a year. And that's such a significant amount from your income. Plus the property tax goes up in value, and people don't put those numbers in. So the first year you can get like good numbers maybe, and then the second year, numbers goes down. Plus Airbnb in general in the last couple of years is not doing as well as it was, like, from the corona, and also like 1 year, 2 years prior to that.
Yeah, I'm seeing a lot of that now. I'm seeing a lot of people who bought during COVID because things were great. Occupancies were up. People didn't have any constraints with work or school, and they were traveling. They were going to where they wanted to go. And so you had these really high occupancy rates. And then people who were at home with COVID said, well, I'm going to buy a vacation home. I don't want to stay here all the time. I'm going to get this and I'll just rent it.
All right.
Things went back to normal when we got back to that point where we were literally, when we got back to that point where we're back to normal and things had come back down, people are like, oh, well, the market's crashing. Well, no, it's not crashing. The market's going, it's regulating. It's going back to where it was. It's one of those cycles that when people bought, though, if they bought that property when things were going really good and the income levels were really good, and then all of a sudden they were cash flowing, and now they're not cash flowing as well now, or sometimes they're even negative cash flowing if they put debt on the property.
There are a lot of negative. There are a lot of people who buy homes that they thought it's an easy business. They didn't even look at it as a business, as kind of like a side income, and it's a business. And they are failing miserably. Like they bought a house and they literally need to put money out of pocket every month, and they have to sell. You see now a lot of Airbnb properties for sale. And don't get me wrong, Airbnb is a great business, but the people usually selling are people who just didn't buy it at the right time and didn't know the right numbers.
Plus, they didn't know the work that it was going to take. I mean,
it's a lot of work.
Like you said, it's not like an office building where I get a 5-year tenant in there and I might talk to them once a year. I mean, it is daily getting up and managing your property. And that's why you're talking about that 2 to 3% cap. It's like, if you're buying these things on a 2 to 3 cap, you're out of your mind, because you don't understand that you could go get an alternative investment. You could go get a long-term, heck, you could go buy a Walgreens and get that type of 30-year cash flow, and you're 6 capping, right? And if you're going to pay 2 to 3% cap or get a 2 to 3 cap on something that you're buying, where you've got all the headache and the work that you're going to have to do, you're just not thinking it through. And then of course you're going to get to the point where you're like, this isn't for me. And then you're going to start selling and getting out, or you're going to treat it like a business, try to figure out how to get above that 10% return. Actually, I even think 10% is a little bit low for the type of brain damage and the work that you have to do. Of course, you've got the appreciation that you can take into consideration. But when I look at appreciation, even, I don't even put a big number on. I go, you know what? I'm going to put a 3% appreciation rate over the holding period.
Like 5%.
Yeah. And then if you get 10%, great. It's gravy, but I'm crusty and conservative. So I plug in at 3%.
There is also another thing that came into the equation, which is arbitrage. properties. This is relatively new in the last like probably 2, 3 years. I think it started much more during the corona, that people are renting homes and then which are regular long-term homes, and then they're making them for Airbnb and renting them. So when you're not going to see them from the market of the sales and purchases, but you meaning like you don't really know those numbers exactly, but there are a lot of more homes in a specific area that now are doing arbitrage. And I also get a lot of personal friends that they come to me and they ask me like, what's going on with properties that I can rent for 2,000 and make, you know, 1,500 a month to my pocket. And those are usually people who have no experience with real estate. So I tell them, in theory, people are knowledgeable. It's possible. But the problem is that it's not a side hustle. Just like we discussed, it's an actual business. Nowadays, Airbnb, if you don't get the 5-star reviews repeatedly, nobody will book with you. And sometimes you have double booking. So you have like someone getting out of the house at 11 a.m. and another guest coming in at 4. So you have a couple hours to really make sure the house is clean. And what happens if people moved out and something is broken and you're in your other job, the full-time job, and then, I don't know, the cleaner call you and he's like, oh, the chair is broken. What do you want to do? What are you going to do? You're not going to leave your job to buy now. And people are coming to the Airbnb. They're expecting like 5-star experience.
Yeah.
They're going to see a broken desk or something. They're going to complain and ask for returns. And it's a lot of headache.
Yeah. And that's why you always want the cap rate to reflect the headache. You want it to reflect the risk, and you want it to reflect what you're going to have to be putting out personally to go into it. And that's why, when you look at real estate too, there's always, a cap rate that goes to the real estate, but there's also a business value contribution to it. And the thing about what we do, like you said, it's not just like your office building. You are going to have that day to day. It is like a business that you have to run. So I always tell people, you got to look at that base cap rate that you might want to come back from the real estate, but then what do you want above and beyond that? Because you are going to be daily doing so much work on this property. So you want to get compensated for that brain damage.
Right. There's also another thing to look at is that if you're doing it yourself or with a management company. So the way we work, we are charging 20% for management. So obviously, if someone will do it himself, in theory, he can do better than 10%. But it's someone who have to be local. The house that you buy have to be next to you, and you really needs to be hands-on. So people can still get more than 10% if they do it themselves. I do think if after the management fees and everything, if you're really netting like 9-10% to your pocket, I think it's pretty solid. Plus, the way that we're working, we are making sure that we're adding value to each property. We're really focusing now, and we're probably among very few companies that we're doing resort-style experiences. Basically, if it's when we're buying the acre lot properties, so we're actually adding to the outdoor, the volleyball court, pickleball court, basketball court, mini golf, picnic area. We're really doing an experience that is giving the people the chance to really enjoy it like a resort style. And then inside the house, we're adding the regular pool table and foosball, air hockey, all those stuff. If we have space, we do also a movie theater. So we're really trying to give experience, and that also adding value when you're selling the house, because you don't really have a lot of homes that have that. If right now you're going to an acre lot neighborhood, for sure you're going to see pool outside, but then 90% of them, that's all they have. And then 10% sometimes have like a tennis court, but nobody really have like the wow factor when you look at the yard and you're like, okay, if I have kids or a guest, that's where we want to be the whole time.
Yeah. And I think too, it gives you that competitive advantage when you're listing on Airbnb. It's like when you go somewhere with the family, you want things to do. You want to enjoy each other. You want to go sit in that movie theater. You want to go outside and play that sand volleyball, whatever it might be. So that house that doesn't have those things versus a house that does really gives you that competitive advantage.
So that, and also the market really pushed us to do it. So when we started, we bought regular 4 bedrooms home with a pool in a pretty close location to the beach, and they were doing amazing. And then when the market really became saturated, so before they started to shift south, we were saying, okay, what's the next thing that we can do that is different? And that's how we kind of took a risk, let's say, for the first property, and we bought something in the suburbs because the logic say that it's vacation rental, like that's kind of like the name of it. So if it's a vacation rental, you're like, why will people go to a suburb and pay 1,200 a night for a house? And we assume that if we're gonna do what we just said, the experience home, to give them all the options, they will want to do it. But when you're the first one that does it, it's kind of like a risk, and it was very profitable risk at the end. And then we start copying it, and that's pretty much all we do right now, to buy all-inclusive resort-style homes.
Yeah. So when you're buying these things too, you were talking a little bit about your thresholds. You said that you kind of feel comfortable at like that 9 or 10% type cap, but that's without your appreciation over the hold. I'm assuming that's just kind of the cash on what you bought versus what you're going to bring in.
Yeah. That's before appreciation for sure. And when you're talking now about the cash on cash versus cap rate, so that's actually also very important. And that's kind of like what I recommend a lot of people. If we're buying with a loan, we're putting 40% down on the loan. And then with the renovation, furniture and everything, it's about 10% more. So we're pretty much 50-50 with the bank loan versus the cash. And a lot of people that want to jump into the vacation rental, they're like, well, I'll put 20% down, I'll buy a house, which, conventional loan, it kind of makes sense because it's still a lot of money, the 20%. But for this specific business, we noticed that a lot of people that put only 20% are not really protected when the market starts shifting. So a lot of the properties that people bought at the peak like 2 years ago or 3 years ago, and they bought it at a certain price and put 20-25% down, are now actually losing money. And the people put 40-50% down. So yes, they're not making as much, but they're still protected. They're still positive on the cash flow. And that's definitely something that I recommend people if they can.
Hey, everybody. I hope you're enjoying this episode of the Vacation Property Seekers podcast. I want to let you know about one question that I get all the time. And that's, how do I forecast my cash flow and my profitability when investing in a vacation home? Now, if you've ever wondered that, or you know somebody who has, you're in the right place. We've created a free training called Financial Forecasting for Maximum Vacation Home Profitability. Now, in this training, we're going to guide you step by step on how to accurately project rental income, estimate your operating expenses, and calculate your returns so you can make informed investment decisions. You can access the free training at vacationpropertysecrets.com. So if you're ready to dive deeper into financial fundamentals and maximize your profitability, visit vacationpropertysecrets.com. Yeah, and I don't know, I'll ask you a little bit about how you determine that 50% factor where you want to come in at, but I agree with you 100%. Some people go, if you over leverage it and then all of a sudden you get a downturn in the market, you could negative cash flow on a property, and you got to be ready for that. But I always tell people too, it's like, put together 6 months of reserves. Those first, when you have that income coming in and it's raining, things are doing well, put out your rain bucket, collect the rain, put some reserves in place so that you can weather a short storm if in fact things do turn, or if things go down for a little bit, because we all know that real estate is a cycle, and there's all these different cycles, whether it's pricing cycles, whether it's occupancy with short-term vacation rentals. The market is consistently churning and moving, and sometimes we're way up here and sometimes we're down here, but you've always got to just be prepared for that. I think if you're prepared for it, prepared for those downturns, you can weather that storm and be fine. But it's the people who are always on that razor's edge, where if things go down and they're not ready for it, or they don't have the income on the other side to support it, those are the guys that get in trouble.
100%. And it's funny because you recommend it to people, but then they save money, and then another deal comes through and they're like, okay, I have some money, I have to buy this deal. I'm going to lose it if not. and then they've been positive, but then they're putting that money, and again, it might be good for a few more months, and then they're losing. I had an amazing property that I was under contract when the interest rate is still high, but the interest rate was very high back then, and I believed in that property so much. Like, it was an amazing property, but after we ran all the numbers, I saw that I need to be at least, like, before I do anything, $10,000 a month to pay out for the mortgage payment, the insurance, the taxes, the landscape pool, all the regular stuff. And I said that right now, yeah, it's supposed to make much more than 10,000, but in the slow season, and if the market shift, and it's very tight. And
Hmm.
I end up getting out of the contract. And I can tell you that looking backward, I don't feel sorry for that. I mean, it was great at that time, but I feel that people don't need to just jump and, if they see something good, just say, okay, no matter what, I'll buy it. Like, you have to really be calculated with to really know the risks as well, and feel okay with saying no to something that you have in your hand, which is pretty hard.
Yeah, it's really hard, especially for new people coming in that haven't experienced that bad property. I mean, once you start experiencing a couple of dogs that you get into your portfolio, then you understand the importance of taking your time on a deal. And we had one down in Costa Rica that I love. This property. It was beautiful, overlooking the ocean. This beautiful infinity pool. I just love being there. But it was one of those things where I didn't feel 100% comfortable with the cash flows that I was putting together. The returns were pretty decent, but we just didn't know for sure. But, we got it under contract. We did our due diligence. I actually went and stayed in the property for 10 days, just sat out there, really doing the analysis, making sure of what was happening with the Airbnb's in the neighborhood. And at the end of the day, even though I loved that property, I just didn't think it was going to meet the thresholds that we require for our investments. So
Yeah.
we ended up, pulling the contract and not doing the deal. Yeah, it was a kind of a bummer because, yeah, I loved that property. I love the infinity. I loved all the feel about it. But since it didn't quite make sense financially, or when you definitely penciled that thing out, it was one of those that, you have to feel good walking away from a deal that doesn't quite meet your criteria. There's nothing wrong with that. Another property is going to come in that you're going to fall in love with, or that you're going to like, but it's just going to pencil out a little better.
I mean, you have to know that if you're buying, especially multiple properties, you're going to have those properties that are not doing the exact thing that you thought. We have one property that is one block from the ocean. It's an amazing property. It's 4 stories, elevator, rooftop, high ceiling. It's like everything you can think of. And when we bought it, we got a certain quote for the insurance. I don't know if you guys are familiar with Citizen insurance.
Yeah, I know it. Yep.
So Citizen is kind of like the cheapest insurance usually. And Citizen insured us. And after a few months, they came and they said, well, they reassessed the value of the house and it's over their threshold. So they canceling the insurance. You have to find another carrier. The other carrier was $20,000 more expensive a year.
Ah,
And this is for sure something that we didn't anticipate, of course. Plus, the market for the Airbnb, I'm not talking about the value of the house, because the value of the house did go up, but the Airbnb return went down regardless. Like the ADR, the average daily rate, went down about $100+ a night, and the occupancy rate went from like 70% to around 60%. And then when you put all of those together, you're at best breaking even.
mm,
And that, sometimes it's impossible to anticipate it because you're buying a great house, just like you said, that you said no to, but you're buying a great house that the numbers works, and then a lot of things change. And all of a sudden you're either losing money, breaking even. So those things do happen sometimes. If someone is doing his first home, so I wouldn't buy a house like that as a first home, the 4 stories. I'll really do the less risk as possible, like not to invent the wheel.
yeah. Well, and we had a property, one of the properties we did buy down in Costa Rica. It was clicking along, it was doing great, and then just this last year, the Canadian dollar crashed, and it didn't crash, but it was, it went down quite a bit. And so the Canadians, we get a lot of Canadian tourism down in Costa Rica. It's one of our primary people that come down. So they stopped traveling this last year. There's a lot of people who weren't traveling. So yeah, our occupancy, it went down. Our average daily rates went down. But the good thing is we were prepared for it. You know what I mean? It's one of those things where, we're all cash into the property so we could absorb any kind
Right.
of hit that we might get. It's a blip. We're already way, way up moving into the next year here. Things are already starting to really cycle back. But if you're not prepared for that blip, for that one little thing or that one bad year or those bad 6 months or whatever it might be, that's where you're really at risk. Because if you don't have it
100%.
personally in your pocket to fund, and you don't have the funds in there from the property to fund, that's when you find yourself stuck.
It's 100%, and that's going back also to the LTV that I mentioned. That if you would have bought that property with 20-25%, assuming you can get a loan in Costa Rica, then you will have to sell,
Yeah.
or really bring money out of pocket.
And getting funding in Costa Rica is a pain in the butt, but we won't talk about that. But it is one of those things where, I was glad that we had it in cash because, the property made money. The investment returns weren't what we wanted them to be. But then again, if we would have had financing on the property, it would have created a whole nother set of problems and issues that we didn't have to deal with.
Yeah.
How did you guys come up with your 50%? What was that thought process when you said, I think 50% is a good LTV to be at?
So when we wanted to scale the company to buy more and more properties, we brought a few people to be on the board. Those people are people who already made hundreds of millions of value of deals that have 30, 40 years experience in building funds, building syndications, and working with banks. And we just came up with the 40% as the right number. I can't really tell you the whole process of how we got to specific. It's just getting a lot of smart people on board, and we got to that number. I can tell you also that for hotels, so we do have a few hotels. We did not buy any new hotels in the last couple of years because it's just impossible to find hotels that will give you the right cap rate. But recently I got a pretty good deal, and hotels, when you buy like 40 doors and stuff like that, it's expensive. So to put 40% down on something like that is very hard to increase the cash on cash to be like an amazing deal.
Yeah.
But we still decided that that's what we do, 40%, and at the end we didn't buy it. And I feel very comfortable with not buying that hotel. And I can tell you it was in a very prime location and it looked extremely interesting. By the way, just to give a very kind of like short site also on hotels. So the hotels that we have, a few of them, they were a couple years ago at 80% occupancy at a specific ADR, let's say 140 ADR. And 2 years after, they're doing around 63% occupancy and 120 ADR. And those hotels we bought in 2017, give or take. So they're still doing good returns. But the numbers, what I'm trying to say, if someone will have given you the same hotel now 2 years ago for the same price, because in theory, the market goes up. Even if it stayed the same for 2 years, you will get it for the same deal. 2 years ago, the numbers would have worked, and now they're not. So you have to have this experience before you jump into the big league to really buy the 40 units, 100 units hotels, because people will sell you a dream. The brokers of the sellers, they will tell you, yeah, it's making this and that. And when you really look deeply into the finance, which they don't really share, you see that you're going to end up breaking even or maybe lose money. And that's like, you're talking about, 6 million and up deals. You
That's a
cannot
lot.
really bring a lot of money out of pocket. You're going to go bankrupt.
Yeah. And I always tell people that the deals that you walk away from are just as important as the deals that you take on. because again, if you're not being analytical, if you're not looking at the numbers, if you're not looking at the history, if you're not looking forward to figure out, okay, what's going to happen with my insurance, what's going to happen with my taxes, next year, not just what's happened over the last 3 years. Insurance, like you were even mentioning, is very different now than it was 3 years ago. I mean, it is inflated significantly. So if you're backward looking instead of forward looking in some of these areas, you're going to get caught too.
But by the way, when you buy, for example, cash, so a big chunk of the insurance cost is the wind. That's really like the one that can be $15,000 to $20,000 as itself. If you're buying it cash, obviously it's your choice if you want to do it. If you're buying it with a loan, you have to do it because the bank will make you get the loan, the insurance. Well, I personally, and it's really my personal view, I'm not saying that we do it because for the syndications, you have to be protected. But if I'm buying my own house right now completely cash, I will most likely not get a wind insurance at this time because you still protected. You can get a flood insurance. So when there is a storm, 90% of the damages are due to flood. So I do recommend to get flood insurance. But the wind, if right now a tree fall on your roof and you have water damage from whatever is happening, the chances of it is very, very minimal. Now, let's say that it's 15, 20,000 a year, and something like this happens every, let's say, and I'm exaggerating, every 5 years, your roof will be gone. A roof is like 30,000. So in 2 years, you're already covering that expense regardless, with not paying a wind insurance. So that's like my recommended view. If you do buy cash, there are ways to make the numbers more in your favor. That's of course a part of it, but it's so much to that things are changing. And again, to sell you a dream is very easy. The deals that I do, for example, I mentioned to you before, not in this podcast, that I have some deals in Africa. So I buy hotels on waterfront. And it's very easy to sell a dream there. You see a 30-unit hotel on the ocean and everybody happy and it's so cheap and stuff like that. The workforce is like for 7,000, it's a full workforce for the whole hotel, which here is like one person.
Yeah.
And if you don't know the exact numbers and also anticipate the right occupancy rate, ADR, and you're going to fail. And people can sell you a dream, just like people sell a dream over there. They can sell it here and neglect a few of the numbers.
Yeah. Well, and it's all relevant too. Like you're saying, you might have a cheaper labor force down there, but if you get lower rents, that equate to the lower, and then you've got the lower labor force costs, and it's all kind of relevant. You could have, I tell people, it's like, I could be looking at a $10 million property and it's giving me a 15% return. Why would I go buy a $1 million property that's giving me a 7% return? It's all relevant. So it's kind of like, you got to just look at the numbers and know the numbers. So if you're looking at just price, when you're looking, you're dead out of the gates, because if you're not looking at the cash flows that go with that purchase price, you're just making grave errors.
Of course. Yeah, no, for sure. I mean, the numbers is really, the thing that if you do start real estate, you have to know the numbers.
100%. So I want people to be able to get more information. I feel like we could probably talk for a couple more hours on this just because I nerd out on this kind of thing, and I love the numbers and I love the analytics. But I want people to be able to find you. So where would people go to find you?
So the name of the company is Designed VR. So Design VR Investments will show you like the Instagram, the Facebook. Also, my personal is my last name, Orbach Realty. That's my personal, kind of like the personal business Instagram. And I'll share the actual links with you so you can post it. And I'll be more than happy. A lot of people are asking me if I do like mentorship and so I don't really do that, but I'm more than happy to really help people that are at different states and just have questions, because I remember when I just started and I always looked for someone that I can just ask questions without really be nervous about it. I'm more than happy to answer to anybody that have questions about vacation rentals.
Yeah, that's great. And I'll put your information in the show notes so people can find you really easily. But I got one just last question. I always ask this because we got so many new people coming into this market and trying to learn how to do vacation home investing properly. But if you could give those folks maybe one of your pieces of best advice if they're coming into the market, what would that be for them?
So I think that the best advice that I can have is that if you're just starting, find someone that have the experience for many years and try to do like one project with him so that you will do all the legwork, everything. He will just give you advices. He might help you with getting some funds if needed, but you have to do it. And then from there, once you start and someone is really guiding you through the whole process, because vacation rental is not just to find a good property, it's also to know how many bedrooms should I do, what kind of layout is good for now and also for the resale value, and then the process of furniture, what quality of furniture. Like there are so many questions like that people will just not know if they don't have the experience. It's impossible to know all those stuff. You know, what type of licensing you should get, what channels to advertise besides Airbnb, what type of insurance to get, because you have specific insurances for vacation rentals. And then the management itself, if someone is looking for a discount, should you give him a discount? Someone is complaining and wants a refund. Like it's endless, you know, all the questions. So don't just jump in the water by yourself and say, oh, I'm going to make all the money. No, think about, for me, even if I'm not going to make money for the first project, but it's going to give me all the knowledge needed, then that's worth for me all the money in the world. And then you can really grow yourself and start buying more properties. You know, some people that bought one property and that's it, they start doing Airbnb really as a side hustle. Like they lived in the house, they rented like one room, and they kind of like transition into know exactly what to do. But if you really want to do it as a business, then you have to use someone that is kind of like a mentor in a way, to help you, or use a management company in your area that is very recommended. And that company at the beginning will do everything for you. The thing that will happen though is that it's very hard to learn everything from a management company because obviously they want to make their money for themselves. So they don't really gonna help you to learn everything, but you could see what they're doing. If they're a really transparent company, so you can see all the expenses, you can see how fast they're repairing stuff. I mean, you can learn a lot still. So that's pretty much my recommendation. And of course, check the rules in the specific area you want to buy. You have to make sure that the city allow vacation rental and that there are no limitations or if there are limitations, what are they? Meaning some cities cannot, they can say you cannot rent more than 4 bedrooms or more than 10 people. And also we never buy homes in an association, which I think is also important because some associations allow vacation rentals, but they can change their bylaws if they want at some point. Even if the association is for free, most times we're not, meaning a volunteeringly association, we still most likely will not buy.
Stay
So
away.
be careful of those stuff.
Yeah. No, that's great advice. And it's just like anything, you know, treat it like a business is what I heard you say. And then also make sure that you're getting the knowledge that you need to be really good at it. It's kind of like when people don't think of it as a business, it's like opening a pizza joint. If I've never been an operator of a restaurant or if I've never made a pizza in my life, I don't think I'm going to go start a business, you know, slinging pies.
Yeah,
So
you can love eating pizza. It doesn't mean you'll be good at selling it.
that's right. And so, you know, I'm the same way. Treat it as a business and then get really good at it, really understand the fundamentals behind it. So thank you so much for coming on the show today. This has been great. For any of you listening out there, make sure you check the show notes so you can go out and find Alon. And I really appreciate you coming on today.
Rodman, thank you so much. Been a pleasure.
Yeah, thank you. Thank you for tuning in to this episode of the Vacation Property Secrets Podcast. If you enjoyed the show, we'd really appreciate it if you could leave a rating and a review on Apple Podcasts or Spotify. By leaving a review, you not only support the show, but you also help others find and enjoy it just like you did. Also, please share this episode with somebody who could benefit from it. And if you're aiming to build a short-term vacation rental investment business that's based on strong investment fundamentals and not just emotion, I'd love to invite you to a free training that I'm hosting. It's my financial forecasting for maximum vacation home profitability training, an on-demand video course that's completely free. It walks you through the investment fundamentals to build and scale your short-term vacation rental business. You'll also learn how to estimate investment income and your operating expenses to build a projected pro forma operating statement and the potential NOI and return on investment for your property. Just go to vacationpropertysecrets.com to get access to your free training. We'll see you next week for another episode of the Vacation Property Secrets Podcast.